All right, so are you ready to dive into something seriously spooky? We're talking Dogman, those mysterious creatures said to roam the woods. Ever seen one yourself? Okay, maybe not. But even if you're thinking Dogman, sounds like something out of Scooby-Doo. Trust me, this stuff gets under your skin. We're heading to the woods of Michigan and Wisconsin. Buckle up, because we've got eyewitness accounts, local lore, and even some history to untangle. So let's start with the basics. What exactly are we dealing with when we talk about the Michigan Dogman?
Well, picture this. A creature standing over 7 feet tall, covered in fur, walking on 2 legs, just like you or me, but with a canine head. Imagine those piercing eyes catching you in the headlights on a deserted road. Some say it's been haunting the Michigan woods for over a century, appearing in cycles ending in the year 7.
See? Chills, right? And we've got sources to back this up. One YouTube video, True Stories of Werewolves, dives into some seriously unsettling details. Did you know the earliest recorded sighting was way back in 1887?
It's fascinating how these stories often emerge from heavily wooded, isolated regions. They tap into something primal, our fear of the unknown, the wild, the boundary between human and beast. We see similar tales in cultures across the world, often with creatures that can shift between human and animal forms. Native American legends, for instance, are full of such shapeshifters.
So we've got these ancient stories, but then fast forward to 1937, and a man named Robert Fortney reports being attacked by a pack of dogs, but one of them seemed to be walking upright. That image alone is enough to keep you up at night.
It is incredibly intriguing, isn't it? That detail, the creature standing upright, suggests a level of intelligence, a deliberate action that sends shivers down the spine. It blurs the line between animal and human, between the familiar and the deeply unsettling.
Absolutely. It's like our brains can't help but be both terrified and completely drawn to anything that challenges what we think we know about the natural world. Speaking of unsettling, this same video talks about the song The Legend by a DJ named Steve Cook. He wrote it as an April Fool's joke in 1987, but it totally backfired, and in a big way. People started calling into his radio station, sharing their own Dogman encounters, claiming they'd seen the creature. And get this, Cook has updated the song several times since then, even after a bizarre incident at a cabin in 1997 where something broke in, almost as if to say, this is real, folks.
This is a perfect example of how folklore and real life can intersect. It's like the song, meant to be a harmless prank, provided a framework, a way for people to interpret experiences they couldn't otherwise explain. Almost as if the human mind seeks patterns, narratives, even when faced with the unknown.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, is this a case of life imitating art? Could a simple song actually influence what people think they see or experience in the woods?
It's a question worth considering. The power of suggestion, the influence of stories and legends can be surprisingly strong, especially when we're dealing with something as primal and deeply ingrained as the fear of the unknown.
All right. So we've got these chilling historical accounts, a song that sparked a wave of sightings, but let's get to the heart of it, shall we? The eyewitness accounts themselves. One that really stuck with me was from a night watchman back in 1961. He was working at a factory in this really remote area when he saw this creature, this Dogman, lurking around. And get this, he actually managed to snap a photo.
Wow.
Now it's pretty grainy, as you can imagine, but still, it's hard to deny the sheer creepiness of it. This wasn't just some fleeting shadow. He got a glimpse, and that image stayed with him.
What I find fascinating is that even without clear photographic evidence, these personal stories hold a certain power. They tap into our primal instincts, our fear of the unknown, the feeling of being watched, hunted.
Oh, absolutely. And there's another account from 1987, 2 young guys driving to a cabin late at night. They're on this dark, deserted road when this figure covered in gray fur just stands up in the road and stares at them. Can you even imagine?
The detail that gets me is the description of the creature's eyes. Those piercing, intelligent eyes seeming to observe, to assess. It speaks to a level of awareness, of sentience, that sends shivers down the spine.
And it's not just those brief, fleeting glimpses. Some encounters get way more intense, like the one described in this YouTube video, Midnight Trucker's terrifying encounter on snowy Michigan Road. This truck driver, Melissa, is on her usual route when she sees this massive, fur-covered figure in her headlights. And here's where it gets really creepy. The beast, as the locals call it, doesn't just run off.
The aggression described in this account is certainly noteworthy. It goes beyond a simple sighting, a sense of unease. This creature is actively pursuing, attacking, which adds a whole other layer of unsettling mystery to the phenomenon.
It gets even wilder. She eventually manages to lose it and makes it to a diner, but get this, An old-timer there knows all about the beast, says it's been terrorizing people in those woods for years. Talk about an eerie corroboration.
Wow.
And poor Melissa, the trucker, she's completely shaken. The beast even left these deep gouges in her truck, almost like it was marking its territory. It's that detail, the deliberateness of it, that really gets under your skin.
This fear being stalked of the creature's potential intelligence and awareness is a recurring theme in many of these stories. It speaks to a deeper fear that we're not at the top of the food chain, that something else might be watching us from the shadows.
Exactly. And it's not just truckers who are reporting these sightings. Another video, terrifying Michigan Dogman encounter, park ranger's nightmare, shares the story of a park ranger, also named Melissa, who had a similar experience.
Really?
What are the chances, right? She's doing her rounds in Sears, Michigan, when she comes face to face with this massive, 7-foot-tall dog man in the woods. It growls at her, she panics, and ends up having to run for her life.
It's interesting how many of these encounters happen at night in the darkness. Our senses are already heightened, our imagination's more active. It's a perfect recipe for misinterpretation, or for genuine terror, depending on what you believe.
So true. Anyway, luckily, this Melissa manages to flag down a park vehicle and escapes unharmed. But afterward, she starts researching Dogman sightings and finds tons of similar accounts going back decades.
What I find compelling is that both Melissa's, the trucker, and the park ranger were initially skeptical. They knew the legends, but dismissed them as tall tales until their own experiences forced them to reconsider.
It's almost like these creatures become more real, more believable, when they're witnessed firsthand by someone we might know, someone whose judgment we trust, someone who works for the Park Service, for example.
Precisely. It's one thing to hear a spooky story around a campfire, but quite another when it's your friend, your neighbor, or in this case even a park ranger, recounting their own chilling experience. It makes the impossible seem just a little bit more possible.
This whole idea of a creature blurring the line between human and wolf, it's not just a modern thing, is it? You mentioned earlier that there are echoes of this in Native American legends.
Absolutely. The true stories of werewolves video delves into this, talking about shapeshifters, beings that could move between human and wolf forms. It's like these stories are woven into the very fabric of the land itself, passed down through generations.
It makes you wonder, are these legends based on something real? I mean, did Native Americans have encounters with creatures that we'd now call dogmen?
It's certainly possible. Folklore often emerges from a kernel of truth, a way to explain the unexplainable. These legends could stem from actual encounters with real animals, perhaps ones that exhibited unusual behavior or physical traits. Over time, these stories become embellished, exaggerated, but that core element of fear of the unknown remains.
That makes a lot of sense. And speaking of kernels of truth, we also found this Wikipedia article on the Michigan Dogman, and there's an intriguing detail in there. Apparently, back in 1937, a man named Robert Fortney reported being attacked by a pack of wild dogs, 5 of them. But here's the catch. He claimed one of them was walking upright, on 2 legs, just like in those Native American legends we were talking about.
That detail always sends chills down my spine. It suggests a level of intelligence, of intentionality that goes beyond typical animal behavior. It's this blurring of the lines between human and animal, the familiar and the unknown that makes these stories so compelling, so unsettling.
Totally. It's like our brains are wired to be both fascinated and terrified by anything that challenges our understanding of the natural world. But, okay, so we've got these eyewitness accounts, intriguing historical tidbits. But what about the skeptics out there? Surely there are more rational explanations for what people are seeing in the woods, right?
Absolutely. While it's important to approach these stories with an open mind, it's equally crucial to consider alternative explanations. Misidentification is a big one, especially in the dim light of dusk or dawn, or under a canopy of trees where it's easy to misinterpret shapes and movements. A large dog, a bear on its hind legs, even a deer with an unusual gait could be mistaken for something more sinister, especially when fear comes into play.
It's true. Our brains are constantly trying to make sense of the world around us. And sometimes they fill in the blanks with the most exciting, or in this case, terrifying explanation.
Precisely. And you have to consider the power of suggestion. If you're already familiar with the Dogman legend, you're more likely to interpret a shadowy figure in the woods as such, even if it's something completely harmless.
Right, like that whole seeing what you want to see phenomenon.
Exactly. But beyond misidentification, there are other possibilities. For example, there's a very real medical condition called hypertrichosis, which causes excessive hair growth in humans. In the past, individuals with hypertrichosis were often exhibited as wolf people or bearded ladies in sideshows and circuses. It's not a stretch to imagine that some of these early Dogman sightings were actually just people with this rare genetic condition.
Wow, I never even thought of that. It's amazing how these real-world conditions can intersect with mythology and folklore.
It really highlights how easily our perceptions can be influenced by what we believe, by the stories we tell ourselves.
For sure. And then, of course, there's the psychological side of things. I know we touched on this earlier, but that YouTube video, True Stories of Werewolves, talks about this condition called clinical lycanthropy. What exactly is that again?
Clinical lycanthropy is a rare psychological condition in which individuals genuinely believe they're transforming into a wolf or another animal. It's often accompanied by animalistic behaviors and delusions.
So are you saying that some of these Dogman encounters could be explained by people experiencing a mental health episode?
It's certainly a possibility in some cases, though it's important to approach this topic with sensitivity and avoid making generalizations. Mental health is complex, and these cases are often misunderstood, but it is worth noting that the human mind is capable of incredibly vivid and convincing hallucinations, especially when under stress or experiencing a break from reality.
That's a really good point. We should be careful not to jump to conclusions or stigmatize mental illness.
Absolutely. The point is, there are a range of possible explanations for these sightings, from misidentified animals to real-world medical and psychological conditions.
Okay, I get that, but there has to be a but coming here. Does that mean we should dismiss every single Dogman account as a hoax or a misinterpretation? What about all those genuinely terrified people like those two Melissas we talked about? They seemed pretty credible.
You're right, there is a but here, and it's an important one. While many sightings can likely be explained rationally, there are always those cases that remain unexplained, those stories that defy easy categorization. Those are the ones that keep us coming back to this mystery, the ones that make us wonder if there's something more to the Dogman legend than meets the eye.
I knew it. I knew you were too level-headed to dismiss it all as just tall tales and overactive imaginations. What is it about those unexplained cases that stand out to you?
It's often the details, those specific, often unsettling details that don't quite fit with the more mundane explanations.
Like that detail from Midnight Trucker's terrifying encounter on snowy Michigan Road about the Beast of Sears scratching the truck. That's pretty specific. It's hard to imagine a bear or a large dog doing something so deliberate, so seemingly intentional.
Exactly, and that's the heart of the mystery, isn't it? Those details, those inconsistencies, those moments that make us question what we thought we knew. They're the reason these stories endure, the reason we keep searching for answers.
It's true. Sometimes the simplest explanation isn't the most satisfying, you know? There's something about a good mystery that just captures the imagination.
Speaking of mysteries and satisfying explanations, we should probably address the elephant, or perhaps the Dogman, in the room. The True Stories of Werewolves video mentions this footage. The Gable film that supposedly captured a real-life Dogman, it caused quite a stir online when it was first released. Have you seen it?
Oh yeah, the Gable film. I remember thinking it was pretty convincing when I first saw it. What's the deal with that? Is it legit?
Well, as with many things in the world of cryptozoology, the truth is often stranger than fiction. It turns out the Gable film was a hoax, created by filmmaker Mike Agrusa.
Wait, really? I had no idea. What gave it away?
Agrusa himself came forward and admitted it was a hoax. He said he created the film as a fun project, inspired by Steve Cook's song, The Legend. He even partnered with Cook to distribute it online.
Wow, talk about a twist. I have to admit, I was pretty bummed when I found out it was fake. It seemed like such compelling evidence.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement, especially when something concerns our beliefs or feeds into our desire for the unknown to be real. But hoaxes like this serve as a valuable reminder to approach extraordinary claims with a healthy dose of skepticism.
You're preaching to the choir here. I'm all about skepticism. But it does make you wonder, what makes a good hoax so believable? What can we learn from this about evaluating evidence, especially in the age of online videos where anything can be faked?
That's a great question. And it's something we should all be asking ourselves in this day and age. One key element of a successful hoax is its ability to tap into our existing beliefs and desires. In the case of the Gable film, it played on our fascination with the Dogman legend, our desire to believe that these creatures are real. It also used familiar visual language from found footage horror films, which often lend a sense of authenticity, even if it's subconscious. And of course, it was shared online where information spreads rapidly without always being vetted for accuracy.
So, in a way, A good hoax can teach us just as much about ourselves as it does about the subject matter. We want to believe, and sometimes that desire can cloud our judgment.
Precisely. It highlights the importance of critical thinking, of questioning what we see and hear, and seeking out multiple perspectives before forming an opinion.
Well said. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've got eyewitness accounts, intriguing historical connections, possible scientific and psychological explanations, a debunked hoax. Where do we even go from here?
I think the most important question is, what do you, the listener, think?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? After all this digging, all these stories, weighing the evidence, where do we even land on the Dogman debate? Are there really 7-foot-tall werewolves roaming the woods of Michigan and Wisconsin? I'm still not sure what I believe.
And that's perfectly okay. It's not about arriving at a definitive answer, but rather about engaging with the mystery, the possibility. It's about that feeling you get when you're a kid telling ghost stories in the dark. You know it's not real, but part of you still wonders.
Exactly. That's what I love about this stuff, that primal instinct, that flicker of doubt. It's what keeps these legends alive. They tap into something deep within us, a sense of wonder and unease, all at the same time.
I think that's a brilliant observation. If we try to strip away the sensationalism, the hoaxes, even our own desire to believe, what we're left with is a collection of compelling anecdotes, often from sincere, even shaken eyewitnesses.
Right, like those two Melissas, the trucker and the park ranger. Both convinced they saw something truly strange and even terrifying. You can't fake that kind of fear.
Precisely. And that's where things get really interesting. Because even if we can't definitively prove the existence of a physical creature, we can't ignore the profound impact these stories have on our collective psyche. The Dogman, whether real or imagined, says something about us as humans.
So what you're saying is, maybe the real question isn't whether dogmen exist in a literal sense, but what their enduring presence says about us as humans, about our relationship with the unknown, with the wild.
Exactly. Why are we, even in this modern age of technology and information, still so drawn to stories of creatures that blur the line between human and animal, the familiar and the strange? What need within us do these stories fulfill?
It's like these stories give us a way to grapple with our own primal fears, our anxieties about what lurks beyond the edges of the campfire light. In a world that often feels increasingly knowable, increasingly controlled, perhaps there's a certain comfort, a thrill even, in embracing the possibility of something more out there, something wild and mysterious that defies easy explanation.
Precisely. These legends remind us that we don't have all the answers. They awaken that childlike sense of wonder, that delicious shiver of fear that reminds us we're alive. And in a world that often feels too defined, too predictable, maybe that's a good thing.
So where do we go from here? What do you think, listeners? Are there dogmen out there? We've laid out the evidence, the stories, the possibilities. Now it's up to you to decide. What do you think?
What I find most intriguing is that these stories, whether rooted in reality or imagination, continue to resonate across generations. They remind us that there are still mysteries in the world, things that challenge our understanding, things that make us question the very nature of belief itself. And perhaps that sense of wonder, that willingness to consider the impossible, is what makes these stories so enduring, so captivating. After all, isn't it more interesting to live in a world where the unknown still holds a certain allure, a sense of wonder, even if it's tinged with a hint of fear?
You know what? It absolutely is. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the mysteries of the Dogman. Until next time, keep looking over your shoulder and keep asking questions. You never know what you might find lurking just beyond the edge of the light.